have another fan or another community member from Malaysia. It's always good to meet people that's outside of the Singapore sphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. So yeah, Alice and I have known each other for several years, and I think we connected several times throughout our career. So thank you so much for being early and on time. Well, we have another guest coming in. So everyone, we're live streaming right now, and welcome to our weekly webinar where we invite special guests from the industry in the Asia Pacific region to talk about his or her experience in entering the user experience design industry and what their work is about. So tonight we have Atlas. Atlas is an old friend of mine, and he currently is the associate creative director at Publicis Sapient, which is one of the world's leading digital agencies. And just gonna make sure that I read out his full profile so I do it justice. But we're very lucky to have him. It's been a while since I caught up with him, especially after the whole COVID thing hit. So um, Atlas is a Singapore-based experience designer, and he immerses himself in meaningful experiences in the digital space, right? And he's very driven by the data-centric approach and lean design thinking. And he leads cross-functional teams in Southeast Asia and Japan. So Atlas' team is regional and is based around the world, and so are his clients as well. So I think it's going to be a great mix to talk about what's happening regionally in the UX field. Uh, as you may have noticed from his background, Atlas is also a big gaming fan. He currently is streaming on Twitch, Magic the Gathering Arena. We just spoke about it. So he has like some professional streaming gear over here, and that he is also a big tech gadget fan. So he takes great photos and he buys a lot of exciting gadgets. And I heard that he's also a whiskey drinker. So Atlas, it's great to have you today. We're going to do this like for the next 45 minutes or so. Really wonderful to have you tonight. So can we just start off by, just sharing a little bit about what you do at Publicis Sapient exactly, because it's been a while since we last spoke about it.
So, thanks for the invitation, Daylon. So, hi everyone. My name is Atlas Lim. I lead the experience practice in Southeast Asia for Publicis Sapient, which it was quite interesting when you during the when I saw your invite to the public where you talk about like being one of the top global agency, and that was true. I would say that would be true for the this was 2 years back, because we were in the back then we were in the middle of transiting into a consultancy model. So we as what we do right now, it's really around product design. So we work across multiple regions, Singapore being the Southeast Asia hub. So 70% of our work actually spans across Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Hong Kong, and even Japan. So I actually spend quite a bit of my time pre-COVID in shuffling between Hong Kong and Japan during a period of time, which was quite interesting. So the work that we do spans across a few categories. So experience design is definitely one of the aspects which is my core, but at the same time we are also looking into developing customer experience capabilities as well. So things like service design, spatial design, which I think we have a team who is predominantly working for Japan projects to reimagining spatial experiences. Then for companies who come to us usually with very challenging problems, where this is where if you have read quite a bit in what you see from Publicis Sapient, right? You'll be seeing this word digital business transformation quite often, and that's actually the crux of the work that we do. And I know this is actually quite a big word, but essentially what we do, what I believe in the way of how I interpret it is really driving change within the organization, change within the culture, change within how we look at customer experiences, change within how we look at products. So that's kind of like it in a nutshell.
Wow, thanks for giving a summary. I did not know you guys have expanded and went into physical
Yep.
spaces as well. That's really interesting because traditionally I've always seen Publicis Sapient as a digital agency. So it's great that you
Yep.
mentioned that.
We're not
I'm
the
really
only one because
yeah.
when people see the word Publicis, they will associate that with one with the largest, being the largest
Mm.
advertising network in the world. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that sounds really exciting and all-encompassing as well. I was just wondering, what are some of the more memorable projects that you have come to do in the last 1 or 2 years? Yeah.
Well, I would say the one that I still remember the most is during my time in Japan because I was actually the part of the pioneer team who actually went up to Japan to set up the Japan office there. And one of our early clients is actually All Nippon Airways, which we were brought in to look into how we can actually digitally transform their services and products because there was a sense of urgency during the midst of when they were preparing for Olympics, which as we all know, unfortunately, is going to be postponed. But at that point of time, they were actually gearing up for it. They needed a global consultancy to go in to look into how we can actually help to provide that service for them. So we sent a team in there, and it was actually made up of made of people, a cross-functional team that's based in Singapore, in Hong Kong, and even some even in China as well. So it's made of experienced designers, strategists, content people. We've also got business analysts going in as well because at the end of the day, digital business transformation is really about how we can uncover underserved value to repurpose them in a way where we can actually truly bring it to the in front of a consumer. So at that point of time, I think we ran we ran a series of workshops. uh, I don't know how many people here today is familiar with service design. So I'll start off by doing a whole series of research as part of the service design methodology. So we ran a few series of research, both primary and secondary as well. Then we ran a few workshops, went into blueprinting phase. With at a certain point of time, we even invited a few key stakeholders over to Singapore to run a very massive one because we all. At that point in time, the target audience was really more skewed towards the North America customer, business traveler. So we also invited some of the North America folks from ANA to come in for us to really collaborate and try to co-create the new strategy. And one thing I really like about driving a business design, driving a service design workshop is where you see a lot of like key stakeholders. You see the CMOs, the CIOs standing in front of Blueprint, having a discussion. That to me is gives me a lot of sense of achievement because if you were to if you have worked with a client before, you know that in most cases, right, most of them have their own KPIs to hit. They will have their own agendas to cover, and in most cases, most of their agendas do not align with the agendas for other departments as well. Whereas using service design, we can get them to align and make that trade-offs that they need to have that tough conversation that they need to, and get to a point where they are all looking towards the same the North Star, which is where they can digitally transform and become better than yesterday.
Hmm. That's really awesome. I just wanted to, for the benefit of people who are not too familiar with the term service design, like in your own definition, what is the difference between service design and user experience design? Yeah.
Well, user experience design really okay. I'll give a very layman's term and I might be oversimplify it, but user experience design really takes a look at takes a very deep look in interfaces, in things that your consumers or users interact with. So it could be a medium, it could be an app, it could be a storefront, it could be a form of service that goes beyond screen as well. It could be wearable, and service that touches on not just that because if I were to kind of paint a picture in my head right now, user experience, think of it from an iceberg perspective, right? You have the top of the iceberg and the bottom of the iceberg where people don't see. So user experience touches on the tip of the iceberg, where it's things and elements that your consumer can see and interact with, where what's below the iceberg is your policies, your processes, your systems, your people, your trainings, and your culture, where it comes into the realm of service design. So when we look at both the front stage and the backstage, in order to make sure that we connect all the dots, uncover the gaps, fill in the gaps, uncover new opportunities, and bring better services to the consumer.
Yeah, thanks for putting it so concisely and so clearly. And I think there's a lot of work that goes into the back end of what
Absolutely.
happens in the experience front. And we had Murphy Quack from DBS one of the weeks to share, because he was a UX designer, but he has been hired by DBS in the COO office to just take care of things around like operations and optimizing processes and things like that. So that's really cool. So in terms of the ANA story, like was there anything interesting or any interesting insight that you learned that is okay to share with like the public? Yeah.
Well, I would say there was a lot of observation when it comes to the Japanese culture, working culture, when we went, and so and this is something that is obviously open, public, and things that you can probably Google as well. But it can be quite tough working with running a workshop with Japanese clients, simply because most of them are more reserved, and they tend to expect a pre-read before anything begins, so that they can come in prepared. And it seems like the workshop to their perspective, to their point of view, is more of a scripted kind of like an event, where where in the spirit of a true workshop is where you are always managing change, you are always managing the expectations as well. So it took us a while for us to truly educate them in terms of what we are trying to get out of the workshop. But it was quite an interesting one, because when you ask them questions face on, they will be very overly reserved in terms of answering. And there's also this observation where they practice the hippo prioritization, where if there is a very senior person in the room, everyone will be very silent, which is quite interesting.
I think I remember the acronym as highest paid. I
Yeah,
forgot whatever.
highest paid person's opinion.
Yeah, highest paid person's opinion.
Oh, that's actually an official prioritization method.
That is interesting. So for all of you who are attending the webinar tonight, and we have a couple of more people also on Facebook Live, just wondering how many of you actually struggle with getting your Asian business stakeholders to kind of like open up and be collaborative in your UX design workshops, right? Just feel free to type in chat or give a thumbs up or raise your hands or something like that. Let us know. And we have Atlas, Associate Creative Director for Publicis Sapient, and now one of the world's leading experience design agencies, right? He was just talking about his experience working for Japanese stakeholders at All Nippon Airways, which is one of their key domestic national airlines. So other than that, I was just wondering, like now it's COVID, right? So how has it changed in terms of working with clients or doing these workshops or doing UX? How has the practice changed for you and your team?
That's actually a really good question. But I don't know whether our mileage might be very different from other companies as well. But when it comes to COVID, I would say just on the process perspective, it's very minimal, because as I mentioned earlier, we are already operating in a distributed model way before COVID happens, due to the nature of our work and our clients' requirements as well. With that, most of our clients are actually overseas, and we work with officers from around the world as well, based on where we can get the right capability and expertise. So we have a quite a robust process and a system where most of our team has already been very used to working in a remote environment. And pre-COVID, I was in fact spending more time overseas than at home. which like sometimes my wife will complain quite a fair bit. But I did sometimes joke around the fact that I actually leave. I have a second home, and my second home is hotels, where I do a lot of calls and I do a lot of calls and meetings around that. And then I have a third home, and that's hot airports, which I also do a lot of calls and in the lounge and the meetings. And I'm sometimes, while waiting for plane, waiting for boarding, I even whip out my computer and start doing work as well. So for us, it's just business as usual, because we are all working in a remote in a remote structure and distributed. And we do have 13,000 of developers in India as well. We have 3 hubs over there, which it more so than ever that it doesn't really much affect us. However, the only thing that actually affects us is more on the cultural side of things, where when there is something that we still need to acknowledge, that there is a difference between uh, having conversations on web versus having conversations face to face, because just lose that little bit of that personal touch. And that's actually very important when it comes to building rapport and having a strong understanding, which I think a lot of our members of the team are solely missing that. So as much as we can, we often organize events, gatherings, even whether it's digital or face to face. More so digital because of the situation right now. That we don't talk about work. We just talk about how everyone is doing, to share something that any members of the team has picked up recently that is interesting, and we just spend a good 1 hour a week just talk about that.
That's great. So advice for teams working remotely is to have regular downtime to catch up on matters not related to work, and just to keep the relationship going. That's great. And in terms of practices, I guess like one of the things I would be curious about is like, do you all rely on any software, or do you all rely on any tool to help you all work better as a remote team?
Right. So we over the last couple of years we have been working in Agile. So obviously, Agile comes in various form. Over here, we do have our proprietary method of Agile, but it's closely resemble scale Agile, which is really how we scale, how we have lots of lots of teams lots of Agile teams forming a Agile train, and having accommodating at least a good 300 to 500 teams worth of team members in there, working towards a common goal. So in terms of tools, right, we practice Scrum, Kanban, depending on the need. So there are tools like Confluence and Jira for us to refer to. Obviously, we do also rely on Zoom. We have Teams as well for us to manage manage document sharing and stuff. And when it comes to design tools, right, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because 2 years back we actually started working on Figma. So not just as a collaboration tool, but also as a design and prototyping tool as well, which I think works really well for us. And we've also used other, depending on the client requirements, because not all tool works for the client as well. We have also other tools like Mural. We have tools like Prototype, Sketch to a certain degree, and even XD as well. So there are a lot of tools out there, but I guess my recommendation would be to find one that works for the team.
That's wonderful. And you were talking a lot about Agile, and I'm not sure if this is an industry baseline. Would you recommend UX designers to just like learn Agile, and if they should learn Agile, like where should they learn and where should they start? Yeah.
Well, I would say there are pros and cons to Agile as well. First thing first, Agile is not cheap. So that's one of the myths that we need to get out of the way, right? But what it brings is value in a very accelerated manner. So Agile actually ties in really well with lean UX. In a such where we are not really conscious about having a perfect product in the shortest amount of time, but rather what is it that we can actually create in the shortest amount of time that can bring value at that moment. So the key in terms of agile is really about timing, because that's one part of the skill, you will get from scale agile as well, because scale as agile is not about when we ship the product, but when is there a demand for us to ship the product. So when there's a demand, we ship the product based on the value and based on the time that we have. So there are a lot of like methods and tools around that. I would say it's definitely worth for modern UX practitioners to really pick up agile, because the way I see it, this will probably be one of the very important aspects of knowledge for designers generally moving forward.
That's great. I'm an Agile certified practitioner myself. Yeah, coming from product management, so I think it's very valuable. One of the best pieces of advice I got is that Agile is a mindset. So I don't know if like certificates do it justice, but it is a mindset. And you only understand it after you practice it.
Yes.
I was just wondering, like you said, Agile can be expensive, right? So you need to help justify that value to your clients. So I'm just wondering, how do you justify to clients the value of what you do and the process and the way of working that you guys practice?
Well, I mean, I'll start off by saying money is only an issue to a client in the absence of value, right? So whenever I believe a lot of us have encountered a case where we went in for a proposal to a client, and then they'll say, "Oh, I don't have the budget, too expensive." And when we go back there, we started talking. Oh, yeah, there isn't really a budget there. But in truth, honesty, it's because we have not demonstrated enough value for them to accept that there's a need for it. So in order for us to do that, you have to understand where the motivation of the client lies, with whether from a customer experience standpoint, and also from their individual motivation standpoint as well.
So any advice? I mean, some of the folks over here who's listening to this, they work as freelancers. Sometimes it's really hard to convince them, hey, I think we should do research, or hey, I think we should follow a process to do UX design properly. Like, how do you have any tips in order to like convince this business stakeholder, like, hey, I think this is the right way to do it? Yeah.
Well, I'm always a true believer that research is not something that you sell, but something that you do. So the way I see it, right, when you're trying to pitch into a potential client, you should already have done your due diligence of all the research necessary to make a case. So rather than having them um, proposing that we should do research, but it's really trying to uncover where they need to do the research. So obviously, we should not be doing things for free, but at the same time, you should be able to have a very strong point of view in terms of where you need to focus the research in, and to make a strong case so that they can make that investment. So notice I say investment over buying something, because Agile is all about having the clients to make an investment on their beliefs and on their ambition.
Yeah. Sounds like we got to be really particular about the words we use as well when we're talking to clients and as we're trying to persuade them. So communication is definitely one area. Do you have any tips? Because I know you from when you were kind of like a design manager, and now like you're now at a more senior level. So
I think we know each other way back.
yeah, definitely. But I'm just wondering, like how do you improve your communication skills, like and how has your role evolved, from being a manager now to being a creative
Well, I
director?
mean, as you can see, I'm quite a big nerd, so I'm I'm an introvert to begin with, right? So, and the job requires me to speak to clients, to present to clients. I remember when I first took up a role as the product owner for one of the largest telco in Indonesia, and where we almost fly on a per week basis to go in to speak to like a room of 40 stakeholders. I was actually shaking, like, oh, this is obviously out of my comfort zone. But as you start reminding yourself that you have a team around you that truly believes in you, whatever you say, you have enough data to back that up. You have done your due diligence to make a very strong point of view, and there's someone used to give me this advice that whoever that's usually seated in the audience seat usually would not want you or any speakers to fail, because that's not what they are there for. So something that I personally I remind myself whenever before I make any before I begin any presentation. So it became a very engaging experience, and obviously practice, practice, practice.
Thanks. That's such a great tip. How many of you here relate to being an introvert? Like if you do, just kind of give a thumbs up or something like that in the chat. And I was just wondering, oh yeah, there are a few people here who relate to being introverts. I'm slightly more extroverted, but I'm in between. So I do get energy from people, so it's wonderful. And I was just wondering, like in terms of like you mentioned having this mindset and psychological booster by telling yourself, hey, people don't want me to fail, and I'm here, and I'm gonna share what I want to share. And what if you're really really nervous, like and you need to tell a story, you need to persuade people. How do you do it as an introvert?
Well, it, and I think I've encountered this before as well, where sometimes you're meeting a whole bunch of new people in the room, and you're not sure who they are. You're not sure what they are there for. What's their motive, or what's their motivation. So in most cases, what you will want to do is to kind of make it a little bit slightly casual. Instead of presentation, if let's say if you could turn that into more like a working sessions where it even sounds better just by saying it, right? Because working session to whoever that's coming in means that they are also involved in the process as well. And then at the same time, just like calm yourself down, talk about relate anything, any points that you are trying to make to a personal experience, that you have encountered before. Because by recollecting your personal experience is definitely much more convincing, and it's definitely easy for you to kind of like narrate it out as well. Because I think one of the thing that people really like to talk about personally is about themselves. So you see a lot of good, really good presenter out there in the world. Whenever they talk about some of their key points, they will actually try to bring in something that they've encountered before. Whether is it true or not, another topic. But it adds a lot of validity and authenticity to it as well. And at the same time, by talking about your personal experience, it just helps to calm you down. And at the same time, like you are sharing your personal experience, so it makes it a little bit more personal as well.
That's wonderful advice. Start with what you know, and start with your own personal experience, which is the easiest thing to share. So I think that can really help calm nerves and also break the ice and also get to know people.
Yeah.
I think one of the powerful things about introverts is that introverts do have the ability to ask great questions. So I think that's also an added advantage. And you said so yourself that introverts love to, generally people love to talk about themselves. So that's great. I was just wondering, now you're kind of at the senior level in practicing as a design leader in UX. I'm just trying to understand, for someone who is junior and trying to get to being like a manager or a mid-level designer, what do you think is like the gap, and how should they bridge it? Yeah.
So from a junior designer to a senior designer.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I mean, I guess like okay, I can only speak from my experience on how
Yeah,
we
for
how
sure.
we train junior designers into and put them into towards the trajectory of being a senior designer. So, for junior designer, what we focus more in creating a growth plan for them is really around exposure. Because if you're coming out as a junior designer, you might be still early in your career, where you are still trying out what you are actually trying to specialize in. And exposure actually helps in terms of giving them a better sense in terms of what they are trying to focus on in the future. So by giving them different exposure in getting hands-on in different sort of UX works, or even sometimes even UI works as well, or even get them to do some strategy work as well, or even research. This will give them a bearing in terms of where they want to focus on in the future. And once they have identified that, this is where we'll start getting them into a specialization and give them more focus and give them the coaching that they need. I always prefer a one-on-one coaching, so they will usually get paired with someone like myself or someone like a senior designer who is really good in that field, to give them the guidance, or even get them paired up in the same project as well, so that you can actually learn by apprenticeship. That's something that I mean, it may sound a little bit traditional, but I feel that the quickest way for you to learn and grow into a senior role is by following another senior person.
Sounds great. I personally believe in the power of coaching and mentoring. I've benefited personally from good coaches and good mentors in my career. Definitely, as we're running an education company now, we have group coaching programs and one-on-one mentoring as well.
Yep.
So really great that you mentioned that. In general, like for people who are entering the industry, because I think we spoke earlier about bootcamp graduates and things like that. Do you have any advice for people who are like looking to break into the UX industry, particularly for people who used to be in traditional communication design or graphic design roles? Yeah.
Well, that's actually a really good question. I came across actually a lot of people who wanted to kind of cross over from UI to UX, and that's actually not surprising to me at all, because obviously, as we go along into the future, right, the way I see envision is that there will not be any UX or UI designers in the future. You all be like a mix of a hybrid model where we will probably be calling ourselves designers or just product designers in general. So it's very important for them to take, if they have identified this as a path that they want to take, to do it early. And obviously there's always a sense of fear that they do not have enough techniques or enough knowledge around that. So reading up is actually quite important. And there are a lot of really good materials online, and even courses that or coaching programs that they can actually embark on. And it doesn't require you to go into a full-on degree, or even some sort of like a full-on like multi months or year certificate for you to do that, because this information out there. So, but you do need to have a sense of understanding in terms of basic understanding in terms of what are the methodologies and the activities UX designers do, and then get yourself practice per site projects, beef up a basic portfolio, and get it reviewed by senior people who have established themselves, and then get some advice from there and continuously improve that. So that's kind of like testing and learning, if you will.
I'm going to ask on behalf of some of the people here who might be interested to join Publicis Sapient. Like what do you all look out for in your candidates who are designers? And yeah, are you guys hiring at the moment? Yeah.
Well, we are always looking out for the best talents. In fact, I think there is a graduates program that it's currently running at the moment. I'm not sure it has whether is that close or not. But till there, I think we have our hiring team has informed us that we have about 60 applicants, and we're in the middle of reviewing them. I think the application is still open. So the one thing that I always look out for is the meter part, where you tend to have a story and then you tend to have the output. But what I'm actually more interested in is the process of how you get there. And this is one thing that I normally see as one of the pitfall for a lot of UI designers who wanted to convert into UX, because I'm also a visual design trained back in the days, so I kind of can understand and empathize on how they really want to constantly present the best out in front of in their portfolio. And for me, right, for especially for UX practitioners, it's really all about how you articulate the process, and how do you identify and frame your point of view, and how do you continuously kind of test it out and get the data, and how do you interpret those data. That actually excites me more than like looking at this is the brief and this is the output. That's it.
Yeah, then everything in between is like a black box.
Yes.
And you don't know what's going on. I think that's so important. Process is definitely something that needs to be described, but not just in any way. but in a very data-centric manner, right? How does the insight inform the design and the results, and to show that you've done it end to end, including like testing. I was just wondering, do you get opportunities to do a lot of testing in agency work, especially for like shorter term accounts who are like not with you like for an entire year, just out of curiosity.
Yes, we do. In fact, research and testing is actually one of our key capabilities. We do have a whole team of people that just focus on testing and research, um, and it comes in a lot of forms as well. It could be it could be big into a part of the agile process where as part of the test and learn approach, we have to continuously test in the form of a demo. At the same time, whenever we need to we need to test a new hypothesis, right? We have to find different ways of testing them out as well to validate whether is there any value for us to further explore that, further develop that into a full-on MVP, so that we can actually bring that into the market and get more data from it. So I would say testing and learning is definitely one of the key aspects of being a UX practitioner.
That's awesome, because that's very different from what I hear in the past. Like, I mean, a couple of years ago, like a lot of the clients still do not believe in the process and methodology, and I think they commission agencies to just build prototypes essentially. So it's really great that now your agency has nailed down this process, and that your clients understand the value of it, and that you enforce it, and that your clients are paying for it. And I think that's great, because it also brings business value to whatever they're doing.
Absolutely. I guess it's also largely down to the a lot of like success stories from a lot of those startups or unicorn, where you see a lot of those companies where how they leverage on data, and how they leverage on how they leverage on having a like getting a better understanding of consumers, developing customer data platforms, trying to kind of uncover that a little bit of the Westworld kind of like model where you can really understand a profile so in depth by looking at it from a multi-dimensional view. So that's something that's actually more and more so relevant in these days.
I'm glad that clients are starting to see the importance of data, and that you're helping them to achieve that through data centricity in your design work. I was just wondering, in general, like you mentioned Westworld, right? Like let's just speak about roughly, like in general and broadly, what are some of your favorite designers, or what are some of your favorite pieces of inspiration as you do the work you do as a designer?
Well, I draw a lot of inspiration from a lot of sci-fi movies because, again, I'm quite a nerd and I'm a Trekkie. So Star Trek, you see a lot like future look, forward-looking kind of technologies there, and which that inspire a lot of companies in the world to go into the direction in terms of like developing services or products around in that form, in that genre. And like you have a lot of other sci-fi movies like I think, what was that, Minority Report, and that triggers the whole like augmented reality kind of like possibility around that. So I draw a lot of like those inspiration from those movies, but like the difference between movie and reality is that how we can actually find a logical means to realizing those experiences.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you share that. Big sci-fi fan myself, and I was just wondering, in terms of, you mentioned something earlier about working in a startup, right? And a lot of startups are trying to disrupt the industries and the incumbents. And I was just wondering, what would be your pitch to a talent to join an agency versus joining a tech unicorn or a tech company, a tech startup? Like, why should they join an agency versus like a tech company?
Well, that's actually a really good question, because usually I won't ask this sort of question, because there are pros and cons in joining a tech startup and versus joining a agency. Startup will give you the consistency of seeing your product maturing a long time, where agency or consultancy will give you the exposure in working with different industry and different products and services. So that's kind of like that's kind of how I will explain it.
A
But
general
it
overview.
it comes down to choices where would you want to would you want to focus on one service and product and make sure that it became a very it bear fruit, it starts to mature, it starts to grow, or would you want the exposure of working on different kind of verticals for spanning across financial services to automobile to retail to different sorts of
Mm.
like energy and commodities and things like that. So all things in is really down to your aspirations.
Yeah. I remember going to your office, Singapore office, like a couple of years ago, and
Oh,
I remember someone telling me, I don't know if I was there to meet you or someone else, but I remember someone telling me like every person who joins your agency actually has a 2 weeks initiation program, and they get inculcated into part of the culture. So I was just wondering, what is the culture over there, and then I'll kind of make a general comparison to the tech startup culture, and then we see like how it's different. Yeah.
well, if you were to ask any members of Publicis Sapient, they'll give you a slightly different story. Obviously, the official story is that we do have an onboarding program where in your first 2 weeks of initiation, you will get the opportunity to meet with all the different domain leaders in the company, even all the way up to the managing director. We'll bring you out for coffee, introduce ourselves, introduce around what we do, how do we work with other domains, how trying to understand the new joinee a little bit more and share some tips and around how we can get around get by the company, give them some recommendations of food choices during lunch times and stuff like that. And obviously, we have the whole series of like process of like paperwork and like which our people team will take care of that. For me, right, just on work culture, right, I remember when I first joined Publicis Sapient 5 years ago. I was on my day one. I was already put into a project right off the bat, and it was an ongoing project. And we all know that being in an ongoing project as a day one joinee, not just from a project perspective and but from a company perspective, it can be quite challenging. And I have to pick up a new software in 3 days so that it won't feel like I'm holding everyone back. And that's actually one of the true value of being agile, because when someone's dropped the ball, it's actually very obvious. Everyone can see. So there is a little bit of a peer pressure to make sure that you do not want to let your team down. And that's kind of like that level of commitment that I do see quite a fair bit of every all the new joinees for Publicis Sapient, because there is a level of intensity and a certain level of respect of being a professional, because anyone that walks through the door, right, is being treated as an equal professional, where we will expect the same out of you from what we expect out from ourselves.
I think that's such a great point. It's to me, I also recall that agency lifespan usually isn't more than 2 to 3 years. So the fact that you've been there for 5 years, it really says something about the environment and also says something about the work you get to do.
Well,
Uh,
at 5 years, I'm still considered a newbie because we have people in the company for 22 years.
oh wow,
Yeah, that's actually our MD. He is actually
nice.
this is actually his first job, and ever since 22 years ago, he has still been in this job. And average, I would say, in our Singapore team, we will have people around 7 years mark, 12 years mark. So give or take
Mm.
around 10 years.
Wow, that's wonderful. So we have a question from the audience. Shimin was asking which would be a better environment, learning environment for beginners. Is it a tech startup or an agency? I guess you can answer from the agency perspective, then I'll answer from the tech startup perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
In an agency slash consultancy environment, it would be good for new joinees to come in to get the exposure, especially when they're still trying to get their bearings around. Is this career it for me? So you will get exposed into different types of activities and tasks where most of the cases it's not really what is being stated in your title, because in our environment, right, title is just secondary. It's really how much you can offer and how much you can contribute in a cross-functional team. And in most cases, right, as being in a cross-functional setup, you do have to you do have to give your peers a hand if let's say they need some help, and vice versa. And that's how we actually work together in a very cohesive and collaboration environment. And being a new joinee, you would also get to work with different people from different domains as well, like strategy and consulting. You have like people from engineering team. You have people from research that you can actually talk to, who they are probably a few steps away, or rather like a few clicks away now. So it's actually easy for you to just reach out to them to just have a chat about things, and everyone is very open about sharing. Like I said, they like to talk about themselves.
Still true to the advice. Yeah, I recall that being one of the key features about like agency environment usually is a little bit more fun and more casual. But of course, there's an intensity when it comes to work. That's something I recall. To answer your question, Shimin, it depends on the startup that you join, and it depends on the stage that they are at. So as some of you know, I used to be at Razer. And Razer is really intense because it's growing, it's publicly listed. And I think they're usually like, as a team, we deliver a lot, right? And there are a lot of deadlines to kind of like follow. So in terms of learning, I think it can be quite a steep learning curve. But I don't know, for some strange reason, people seem to find like if you survive Razer for 1 year, you it's like a badge of honor. So it depends on which startup you join. If I could really put a general advice across, like choose the manager you're going to work with rather than the company, or rather than the category, like whether it's an agency or startup. Because if you have a good manager, you have a good you can be guaranteed that you have a good mentor. And if you have a good mentor, then you know like you'll always be learning something, and that they will kind of like help you along with your career. And as they rise along, sometimes they take you along with your career as well. So I think find a good manager and identify one. Yeah.
That's very true. In fact, in a lot of cases, right, in any whether it's a startup or a consultancy, you tend to want to identify a coach where you can actually learn from, or and follow them, shadow them, see how they it's how they think, how they actually do their stuff, and it's actually much faster than just reading up on YouTube or videos.
Wow, thank you for the endorsement, Atlas. So, I think if there, yeah, I'm wondering if there are any other questions from the crowd. If not, we'll just kind of like wrap up with a very fun and casual session. Oh, okay, we just got one from Izzat. So Izzat says, do you face any challenges synthesizing user interviews remotely? He mentions the context is pre-COVID. It's easy to for everyone to gather in the room, put up sticky notes on the wall. What's your process from user testing to a report, any tools and software recommendation? So main question, any problems working remotely with user testing post user?
Right. We do use softwares like UX Army when it comes to something that some test activities that we can actually automate. There are in a case where it requires a little bit of an interview. This is where we need to add a little bit more structure to how we actually tend to ask questions that we normally do in face to face, where in a face-to-face environment, usually you will be able to have you'll be able to observe behavior and gesture on how they react, and to try to get a sense of of a validation to what the response are. However, in the digital kind of way of doing testing, right? This is where in a lot of cases, we tend to want to use it if we want to collect a certain amount of data. And the prerequisite of doing that is that you need to set a criteria there's something that you can measure that is predetermined earlier. So by creating something like a rubric and setting some criteria in terms of how do you want to test it out, and if it's a scale of 1 to 5, if it's a scale of 1 to 3, what does 1 mean, what does 5 mean, etc. So once you have that, when you distribute that to multiple peers to conduct a similar test in parallel, the results will be conclusive because you are using the same standards to measure.
I think that's wonderful advice from Atlas. If I can add another tool to the mix, we use Miro in our coaching program as well. So that is for kind of like in place of putting post-its up. So I think that was also a tool Atlas mentioned earlier.
Yep, Miro is actually quite a very is a very good tool. I think you back then they were called real-time bots when we started using them. So Miro, Muro, those are all very good collaboration too. So when you are capturing notes, right, they are all done in real time. So everyone can see who is actually writing the notes, where are they moving, what are they looking, and you can even observe them as they conduct those tests as well. Yep.
Wonderful. Thanks for your question, Izzat. I hope we answered that. So we're just going to do a fun one. I mean, if any of you have one last question, I can ask Atlas later. Just going to do a casual one. It's just a series of rapid fire questions, just to see and just to get to know you a little bit better as a person, because we've been talking UX almost the entire evening. So, okay, first question is Westworld or Game of Thrones?
Westworld.
Okay, sci-fi fan indeed. All right. Favorite destination to travel in the world?
Italy.
Italy. Okay. And what is your favorite Singaporean dish?
Bak kut teh.
Bak kut teh.
Debatable,
oh, yeah.
because there is a debate around whether is it from Malaysia or from Singapore, but never mind. Not.
Yes, especially when we have someone from Malaysia in the audience tonight. Okay, we're not going to argue on food.
Yes.
Okay, it's a Southeast Asia thing. All right. So, in favorite book?
BFG.
Big Friendly Giant by Roald
Yes.
Dahl. Wow,
Yes.
interesting classic. And okay, so since you're a gamer, what is your favorite game?
Well, I would say Final Fantasy. Been a big fan, but recently I've been on Magic the Gathering, so yeah, the split between both of them.
Okay, Zul is asking which Magic the Gathering.
Blue Control, because I do strategy games mostly, so I really like. I always prefer Control.
Okay, lovely. So Atlas, do you want to share your Twitch channel for those who want to follow you on Twitch?
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm a very small streamer, to be honest. I'm just doing it.
We all have to
as a
start
hobby.
somewhere, right? Like, you never know. One day you might have your own Patreon channel, and you might be a local celebrity. Yeah.
I'm just going to type it in there. Yeah, but I'm like I said, I'm a very small streamer, and sometimes I don't just do arena, but I also do some unboxing videos. Recently, we have done a video on unboxing with a few other streamers as well. So
Interesting.
And those will be actually published onto YouTube in due time.
Okay, that's wonderful. So Atlas, is it okay if some of the folks here choose to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just find.
Do just let me know that you are from.
You came to the webinar.
You came to this webinar so that I know where you're coming from.
I guess you get a lot of random requests as well.
Yeah.
So okay, great. Atlas, it was awesome having you. If you like, you can stay for a couple of extra minutes, and
Sure.
I'm just gonna cover briefly like what's going to go on in the next week or so, like what other events we're doing. Okay, so just gonna share my screen. Okay, if everyone, I hope everyone can look at the screen itself. So we're CuriousCore. I am the founder of CuriousCore, and I run a design school, and we focus on building creativity, empathy, and critical thinking skills for designers. And it mostly came from a need when I was a hiring manager, and I realized like a lot of the design schools did not address some of these critical skills that we should be building as designers. And the reason why we're running this webinar series is because I realized that many of the events were canceled during COVID, and there was a lack of opportunities and venues for user experience designers and people in the design community to learn more, especially from leaders around the region. We're starting to just see a little bit more ground up events, but none of it done in a consistent basis. So we have been doing weekly webinars, interviewing different experts like Atlas, all the way since like May, where we're right in the middle of the pandemic itself. So it's been great to have wonderful guests and wonderful friends rejoin and also catch up with them over this webinar. If you like what we have been presenting and if you like what you've been hearing, I think I shared like a very quotable quote that Alice shared earlier in the chat. So you feel free to use that if you want to share on social media. And I'll definitely be open to kind of like sharing with you our UX career guide or 6 portfolio building tips, or even kind of just having a brief chat with you about your needs, education needs in your career. And this will be totally free. It'll be a 15-minute chat if you're facing any problems. And additionally, I run Intro to UX workshops, which I used to run when I was teaching for General Assembly. The reason why I do that right now for free is because, well, everyone needs a venue to kind of like upgrade and upskill themselves. So this is a good primer if you're just kind of exploring user experience and you're not very sure about what you want and whether this is the right career for you. I get all these questions answered. And I designed a fun little test myself to also see like if you have the potential to be a good UX designer, all in 1.5 hours. So that's something I do every alternate Mondays right now. And next week, we actually have another friend of mine who her name is Lillian. She's the ex-design lead at Google Maker Lab, and she's an entrepreneur herself. She has a side hustle where she made a card game called Say What, which helps us to learn dialects like Hokkien. It's kind of a fun thing. So it will be an interesting conversation as well, because I haven't actually caught up with Lillian in person for a while. But I'll be asking her how she, took a break, went to study in London for a little bit. That's kind of like how I met her randomly. And then actually, after a year or so, managed to freelance for Google and break into Google and join Google as a perm staff for about 2 years. So I'll be asking about her career journey and also like her side hustle and how side hustles might be valuable for designers. I think those are fun little projects to explore. And last of all, to share, we've made some revamps on our website, CuriousCore.com. If you would like to sign up for the webinar, just go to CuriousCore.com. There's a free webinar section with where we're constantly looking at the data and kind of like improving the overall UX. We are currently in the midst of reducing the number of words on our website. I was just joking with my team that there was a tweet from Twitter earlier that someone said, if I could give anyone a good advice about websites, it would be to reduce the number of words on your website. And I was like, touche with my team. So feel free to check it out. We are running our next coaching program in October 2020. And feel free to stay in touch. If you're not on the list, get on the list on CuriousCore.com. And for those of you who have joined us for Zoom, thank you for joining us. I was just wondering if you could just leave, what are your takeaways for Atlas, so he knows like you have learned something today, right? And that he has actually had his time well spent. What is your biggest takeaway from tonight? And also thank Atlas for sharing some of his valuable experience and insights.
Absolutely. I'll definitely love to hear from everyone here in terms of what you have taken away from this session. And if you have any follow-up, reach out to me via LinkedIn or I'm more than happy to just continue the conversation. And again, thanks, Daylon, for the invitation. And I really enjoyed tonight.
Awesome. You're welcome. So just for the next couple of minutes or so, before Atlas leaves, what is your biggest takeaway? Thank you, Shimin, for sharing. First, the importance of design process. Okay, that's wonderful. What about the rest? I mean, let me just re-quote Atlas. I was like, when Atlas said this, I was like, okay, like this is a quotable quote. Money is only an issue to a client in the absence of value. Dude, you should remember this. This is like this should be your next tweet or something.
Well, I think there's a lot of other interpretation of this as well, and this is a common understanding, and I believe they have also taught this in agile courses as well.
Awesome.
But in true essence, this is something I really resonate a lot because it's all about value. It's not about output, our deliverable. It's what kind of value we can actually bring to in the form of whether is it a product or is it a service or is it a recommendation or a strategy to the client that can actually drive change.
Right. Great. Ella's famous last words of advice. If you'd like to stay around, we're going to stop the live stream and we're going to hang out a little bit for maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. And then after that, we're going to call it a day. And thank you so much, Alice, once again. I think it's been very valuable for everyone to learn from you. Some really interesting quotes about value and also about design and the process and working in agencies versus working in tech companies. So good to hear that now it's also a great place to work for new designers, especially entering an agency. And you also recommend that anyone can reach out to send their portfolio to you to kind of like get into the program, right? That you mentioned.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. This is great. Thank you, everyone. We're just going to stop the live stream here.